Good morning, Alicia.
Hi.
Thank you for coming along this morning. Just by way of introductions, my name is Margaret Part2 and I'm Head of the Skills Academy and Development here at City of Glasgow College. And I'm also a TQFE Associate Assessor at Dundee University and the University of Stirling, and also a peer reviewer here at the college. Would you like to introduce yourself now, Alicia?
Yeah, my name's Alicia Bliss. I'm a photographer. I work in documentary and portrait photography, but I've also got a long history of adult education. I've worked in adult and community education for 8 years, and I've also worked in further and higher education for the last 4 years. So that's involved working in institutions across Scotland, including City of Glasgow College and UWS, where I am at the moment. I've been a lecturer in photography and a curriculum leader in photography at the college.
Excellent, thank you. So substantial experience there. Okay, so the purpose of today is, just to reiterate, is for you to overtake the summative assessment for outcome 2. And what we're actually going to do this morning is to overtake it in the form of a professional dialogue, where you're going to have to explain how you provide feedback to your learners on their assessment to improve learning and to sort of foster wider achievement. So just before we get started on that, can you just briefly give us a profile of your student population?
Yes, the class that you were observing as well is a group of 22 students. They come from all walks of life. 14 of them are progressions from NC photography into HND photography at City of Glasgow College. The majority of them are over 21. I think 17 of the students are over 21. And they've got a range of needs. There are no PLSPs, no personal learning and development plans in the class, but we do have a full-time carer in the class. We've got a young mum, a student who's about to be a dad, someone who was long-term unemployed, a university graduate, and one student with a hearing impairment.
So, Alicia, can you explain the assessment and marking schemes which you used?
Yeah, we use lots of different types of assessments. Usually at the start of a class I'll use a diagnostic assessment just to find out, to gauge the sort of level that the learners are coming in at, and that involves lots of question and answering. It's quite a holistic process. I also use that at the start of most classes. Formative assessment happens throughout the unit, so in the darkroom unit they get instant formative assessment to help them progress, and then we have summative assessments at the end of the class. Another form of assessment I've been using quite a lot with this class, which has been particularly successful, is peer assessment. So I've been getting them, and this is feed-forward assessment as well, so I've been getting them to use checklists.
Excellent.
So that gives them a sense of what I have to find in the descriptor, but it also gives them the opportunity to look at other students' workbooks and other students' work and give each other feedback, and I think that's been really, really good for this class in particular because of the age of the class and because they've got a really nice supportive group dynamic. So you can see he's kind of ticked off if it's good, needs a bit of work, etc. And it's a bit of cheeky feedback at the bottom. He said, don't use staples next time, with a smiley face.
Well, this is excellent. Actually, this is, again, you're drawing here on Dylan Williams' idea of assessment for learning, etc.
Absolutely. Yep, I've been looking at him quite a lot.
Yeah, and also this is a great example of, you know, it's encouraging autonomy and you're sort of extending sort of the values and principles of curriculum for excellence here.
Yep, especially to be successful learners and confident individuals. I think it really raises their confidence when they're not just making work for me as their audience, their classmates get to see it as well, so I think getting that extra boost. And they are remarkably honest. I mean, students, if you get students to self-assess, they usually mark within 5% of the mark that you would give them, so I find the more that we do this, they get into this pattern. And they're working for each other too. So I've got a few examples of these.
This is an excellent example of a sort of a peer assessment template. So maybe use this as a good example of good practice going forward, perhaps.
Yeah, I've used it in other classes since as well, and it's been quite successful. So here's my own checklist here, and here's the students' checklist. And a lot of my own, this written feedback here, I've said that I agree with what his classmate Laura has said about this, which again, it kind of reinforces that the class are saying and doing the right things. I follow that up with our VLE, My City, so they'll get a permanent written record of their feedback as well, so they get their pass and then they get their formal written feedback at the end of summative assessment. I try and always do that within 5 days as well.
So it's the prompt feedback too, which is essential. This is excellent, actually.
Thank you. Because I find if you leave it a few weeks, it doesn't mean much to them. They need it so that they can feed forward, as I said, and make it kind of positive but constructive at the same time. So,
yeah, and it's actually encouraging them to take responsibility, and it's encouraging independence, etc. Excellent. Okay, so you've already reiterated some of the how you provide feedback. So explain that a bit more fully. The different how you give feedback to them, to your students.
So how I give feedback to them, they get their formative feedback, they get oral feedback, they get written feedback, and they get peer feedback as well. So they get handwritten, typed through the VLE, through the internet system that we have in the college, and then also verbal feedback.
So you're talking about the written feedback, so that's giving you a permanent record?
Yeah, so that's as per the college assessment procedure. We always use the assessment procedure or the alternative assessment procedure.
And that's really important. I think that was helpful listening to your comments on sort of prompt feedback as per the assessment procedures. It's important that they get this feedback timely feedback.
And the ones that really want to push forward really appreciate the feedback as well. So
absolutely. But I think what you're saying here, the feedback you're giving seems much more constructive. It's not just saying they're doing well, but it's giving them some feed forward steps for going forward as well. Yeah. How do you feel regarding the effectiveness of the feedback that you gave to your learners? How effective do you think it was?
I think it has been effective. There have been times where I've given someone a resubmit because I can see that student can do better and they've taken it quite badly. So it's about being sensitive about how you do that. A resubmit's an opportunity to improve something. It's not a fail, which can be tricky sometimes with adults, and with children, I guess, as well. So I'm always conscious that I use kind of positive language. I start positively, and also I get them to think about how they're doing. I went to an interesting seminar with Eric Booth. I don't know if you've heard of Eric Booth before, who came up with a structure where you get the students to say, how are we doing today? What can we do better next time? How am I doing today? How can I do better next time? And I sometimes just throw that into the class every so often, like a kind of 1 minute reflection, so that they can stop and think about what to do next. It seems to work.
Yeah, good. Did the students actually overtake their summative assessments?
They did, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can see from the quality of the work here, it's first year work, but the standard is very, very high.
That's so excellent for first year work.
Yeah, and their workbooks are they're very thorough, which I don't tell them to do, I don't expect them to do, but I think the dynamic of this class in particular is that the standard keeps rising because they're motivated. They enjoy college, which is quite nice. So.
Yeah, I think it's excellent, and obviously it's quite obvious that you're actually sort of developing their wider achievement, sort of the softer skills.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I always talk about I think we'll talk about this in the next interview, but we always discuss when we're making work, when we were making the professional window mounts, this is a hinge mount which photographers make to present their work in a gallery or in a portfolio, or they can. I spoke about how they could also use these skills to then get a job in a picture framer or get a job in a gallery. There's a lot of mathematics involved as well, so it meets other core learning activities, so it makes them think that they're not just doing this for me, they're not doing this to hand in for assessment. And also the motivation with this is they can get a prize with Street Level Photo Works in Glasgow, which is a photography gallery and resource. They can win a prize where they get access to the facilities there over summer, so that was a good motivator as well for them.
Yeah, I'm delighted. I think what I'm actually seeing is that the qualification here, the summative assessment, is an essential byproduct, and you're enhancing this wider achievement, which is these attributes, employability, etc., which is it's paramount to allow them to be lifelong learners. So this is excellent.
And I should say, I don't always assess them on the outcome. I often assess the students on effort. If I can see that someone's come from A to B, that's a wider achievement than just kind of you know, skimming through if they're very good. So I do look at the amount of effort and where they've come as an individual.
Yeah, great. Again, actually, one of the questions actually was, how do you ensure your lectures, your students can become more involved in the assessment? Obviously, you've obviously explained that quite fully with the peer assessment, and there's self-assessment going on there too, students?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've got their self-assessment. I encourage professional dialogue between the students as well. I've started to get when I do a tutorial, I'll ask two of them in for a tutorial rather than a one-to-one. So then I do a one-to-one with one and the other, and then they go and feed back to each other for 20 minutes afterwards. So I think that gives them a critical friend that they can talk to in the class. So that, you know, you sometimes notice if you're only doing one-to-ones with them, they don't necessarily see each other's work or gauge what's going on in the class. So I think that's something I want to do more.
That's excellent, yeah. It's quite a hard notion, isn't it, to encourage this reflection? So that's one sort of technique you can use. So
but also, you know yourself, if you get feedback from someone, you don't necessarily pick up on everything. So if there's two of them in the room, they might dot the I's and cross the T's when they look back later, but they seem to enjoy that. So it might not work with another class. This class it's worked really nicely with.
Oh,
They're a good gang.
So what steps do you take to ensure that you're fair and consistent when you're delivering your feedback?
They all get the same amount of feedback, they all get the same amount of attention. Obviously there's a lot of students, so you know you've got to be conscious that you can sometimes get students who want more attention than others, but I try and be as consistent and fair as possible. I mark all of their work at the same time. If it comes in on the same day, they all get their feedback within the same hour. So that I know that they all share it now on Facebook and Twitter and things right away, so you want to make sure that they're all getting their feedback at the same time, so that there's no worry that they haven't passed if I've marked half the class. And I bullet point things so that they get the same things covered in their feedback. So the positive things, what went well personally for their project or specific to their project, and then, you know, if they were to do this next time, how could they improve it?
Excellent. Okay. How did you make sure that you adhere to the college policy and procedure in relation to assessment and verification?
I always refer back to the assessment policy documents of the college and the alternative assessment documents as well. If I've got in any doubt at all, I'll ask my head of school or another tutor who's teaching on the same unit. I am new to the college, so I want to make sure that I'm covering all the stops, but I also always look over and over the unit specification.
Oh, yes.
So, and we make sure that the briefs always match the unit specification.
It's the Bible, isn't it?
Yeah,
the unit spec.
And always have my 12-week lesson plans as well.
What about Quiltum and CAM guidelines?
Yeah, I mean, I think I do those naturally anyway. I make sure that everything's accessible to everyone. As I said, I've got a student with a hearing impairment, so I make sure that everything's written down. I'll often, when I'm going over with the class what we have to do, I'll hand out the handouts that we need, or I'll have a slide behind me, and then I'll talk. So there's alternative ways for them to find out what's expected of them. And I always also put that on My City. Our department uses My City, the college's Moodle, more than any other department in the college. So the students expect to find whatever's in the class on there. So, and that means that they don't have to feel like they take notes. If I've got a dyslexic student, I always print on pink paper for them, and I make sure that I use a font that's suitable for them. I work closely with student support. If any students have got a personal learning plan, I'll make sure that we're assessing appropriately to that student. Sometimes we have interpreters in as well for hearing impaired students, so it can change.
Oh yeah, that's great to hear. Great. And that's great that you're actually encouraging the use of the VLE, which is available to the students 24/7.
Yeah.
And you find that they're embracing the VLE?
They are. I do find sometimes that there are barriers. You know, it's expected that they all have mobile phones and they all have laptops, but some of them don't. So I've got to be conscious of that and not to expect that they'll be able to spend any evening using it as well. But it's all there if they need it, and I encourage them to use the library if they don't have computers, so they can download it all onto a memory stick. But it's all there, and then.
And did you have to provide them with training on the VLE, or did the college?
This class, some of them had come in from the NC, so they knew how to use it, but some of the new ones I spent one-to-one time and small group time with them and guidance, and they had an induction when they started. I think 2 members of that class were late enrollers, so I did a session for them as well. And it's just practice, you know, sometimes just go over the same thing again and again just to remind them.
Yeah, it's obviously you've got a really good relationship with your students, Alicia. Absolutely, you're doing great work.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much. It's just with regard to the next steps. What will happen now is our professional discussion will be internally verified, and that's as per College Procedure on Assessments 2012. But thank you very much, Alicia.
Thank you.